everybody. Welcome to DNN. Second episode. Tonight's episode is going to be about is the government using the media to implement Agenda 21? And if I can get my mouse over there. What I mean by that is the media causing civil unrest in order for the government to enact or start using certain executive orders that presidents have established, bypassing Congress, which a lot of them Congress don't know about. So let's get to that. What I brought up there is President Obama's PPDs, which are presidential policy directives. If you take a look at those, I'll get to those in a minute. All right, I'll get to those in a minute. First of all, that way you'll have a clue on what's going on if you don't, or to get some understanding on what I'm talking about. I'll start at the beginning like I did last show. I'll give you some background information. Alright, so in order for you to understand, basically, you're going to have to know the history of the Constitution and its amendments. So let's start with habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is the right for a fair and speedy trial, the right to stay out of jail, the right to leave jail, the right to be charged with something. If you're not, you don't have to stay. It's the right to have a fair and speedy trial. You have to be charged with something in order to go to jail. And that's what a habeas corpus says. So, and it also states that you can't be confined if you're innocent. You know, if you go to jail, if a cop pulls you over, you go to jail, they have to tell you what they're being charged with. They have to give you a bond. If you don't know what a bond is, that's a money amount, so you can get out of jail before trial. So you can get a lawyer. You have a right to a lawyer. You have a right to fair counsel. That's habeas corpus. So, in addition to that, in addition to habeas corpus, in certain instances, habeas corpus can be suspended in certain cases. Habeas corpus can be suspended, the Constitution can be suspended, and your rights, your amendments, current laws can all be suspended in certain situations, certain circumstances. The laws that dictate what those circumstances are left up to the President and or Congress. The definitions are limited on those, such as states of emergency, or an emergency situation, or what a disaster is. There could be different types of disasters. There could be natural disasters. There could be man-made disasters. All those definitions are left up to the government on what they are. So remember that. Remember that when reading. So the next thing let's cover is martial law. Martial law is the imposition of direct military control of normal civilian function of the government, especially in respect to a temporary emergency such as an invasion or major disaster, civil unrest, or civil disobedience. civil arrest, or civil disobedience, riots, and I'll get to that a little here in a minute, because that's going to mess you up. That's going to cause you to think a little bit more about this. So, like I said, if I'm telling you all this for, is any of these laws have anything to do with, is the government using the media to implement or to start Agenda 21? And I'm going to tell you, and this is telling you the background information, and then we'll get to the what does this have to do with the media, and what does it have to do with implementing Agenda 21. So, martial law is used to enforce government rule over the public. It includes curfews, suspension of civil laws, civil rights, and habeas corpus, as I said. The right to a fair trial, the right to be told what you're being charged with, and the application of military law and military justice over civilians. So, which means that the law that is in the Constitution and in the amendments and your local ordinances doesn't apply anymore during martial law. The military law does. Whatever the military says is what you do. Their laws are left up to them. They make their own laws. They make their own rules. The president makes their own rules for that, the rules for that. Usually, the military just, they give orders, and whatever the orders are from the generals are what they are. So, examples of times where martial law was implemented would be your civil rights movement, the Whiskey Rebellion, the LA riots. LA law was martial law was implemented there. Curfews. They had the right to hold people. All that good, all that bad stuff. Okay, so yes, I'm smoking, of course. So in 1878, Congress passed the Pose Comitatus Act, which forbids military involvement in domestic law enforcement without congressional approval. So that means that basically, let me move my microphone. I don't know if y'all can even hear me. And make sure y'all can even hear me. Hello, hello. Yeah. So let me move this a little bit further, a little better. Let's turn around the wrong direction. So basically what that states is in order to have military involvement on or with the public, or in order to have the military act like law enforcement, you have to have Congress approve it, and martial law has to be approved by Congress. So going back to what I said about martial law includes military justice, and it also includes what the military does. Military justice is the body of laws and procedures that govern members of the armed forces, which is implemented in times of emergency, war, or civil unrest. Simple enough. Okay, so the Pose Comitatus Act was started June 1878 by Rutherford B. Hayes, which it pretty much says you can't use federal the federal military to enforce domestic policies or laws within the United States and on the United States soil. And at the law only applies the way it's written. The law only applies to the U.S. Army. It doesn't apply to all of the armed forces, just the U.S. Army. No any other department of the armed forces or the National Guard, this doesn't apply to them. So the Navy, Marines, the National Guard, the Air National Guard, all of your special forces that are non-Army, that are they still have, they can still have control over that, over whether they can have control. They can be deployed on U.S. soil. Not like the military can. So or the Army can. So the Army, technically, by law, they can't be put on U.S. soil to police the citizens. But like I said, the Navy, Marines, National Guard, Air National Guard, Air Force, they can. That's the way it's worded. I guess that's they may have thought that you could include them with that, or I guess that just goes without saying. But technically, the law states that they can use them. That's what it says. That's what the Posse Comitatus Act says. So, I'll cover more about the Posse Comitatus Act here in a minute, because there's a little bit more that goes with that. So, like I said, what is civil unrest or civil disorder? Civil disorder, also known as civil disturbance or civil unrest, is an activity arising from a mass act of civil disobedience, such as demonstrations, riots, strikes, in which participants become hostile toward authorities, police, violent. And remember that violent part. There's a little more that goes to with that. Civil disobedience is the active or professed refusal to comply with laws or orders that you're given. Yeah, I'm reading it. I'm reading this because there was a lot to go with this. It's a citizens have to. It's if the law enforcement gives you an order, no matter what it is, to a citizen, and you don't obey it, that is an act of disobedience. So, civil disobedience can be defined as being violent, and this is also in there, or nonviolent. There is a clause in there about nonviolent resistance. Even being verbally abusive is an act of nonviolent resistance. Cussing out a police officer, giving them the bird, that technically is an act of nonviolent resistance. So, I think I explained most of that pretty well. I mean, y'all get the gist of it. So there are laws now that counteract those laws. Now there are. Most of them are executive orders. Most of them are laws you've never heard of. Most of them are clauses or executive orders or policies that have been jammed within 14 different remade sections of laws. You know, they've stopped one law and changed it, and then they've turned around and changed it again and tucked something away in there, and then they changed it and added stuff into there and tucked it, and they, you know. So so let me get to what a state of emergency is. A state of emergency. A government can declare a state of emergency during a disaster, civil unrest, armed conflict. It can also be used to suspend the rights of the Constitution and basic laws. Remember me saying that laws, or the definition of most of these, are left up to the government. Yes, it tells you some of the things what the state of emergency is, but they technically leave the common sense up to that of the government, or what they define as a state of emergency. And during a state of emergency, the government can suspend the rights of the Constitution and basic laws to do that. I think that's all I got down there. I didn't finish the rest. Okay, so now going back to what I said about the laws that that cause that pretty much cancels out all the laws that are in the Constitution that protect your rights as a citizen, no matter what is happening, no matter what is going on. Most of the laws that I described for habeas corpus and the Posse Comitatus Act were supposed to be used to protect you, the citizens, from harm in case of an invasion, or somebody bombed the country, or a terrorist, or that's what it's supposed to be used for. However, it can also be used at the will of the government for whatever they want it for, because the language and the definitions are so, I don't know what you would call it, they don't explain it well. They leave room for whatever you want it to be, basically. So if we go, if you've been reading the presidential policy directives, those are Obama's policy directives. All right, so those policy directives are laws and or policies that were issued by the president, and in this case Barack Obama, his administration. Some of these laws are classified, some of them are not, are non-classified. The ones that you see here with the PPD3 or the PPD4, some of these say what they are, but some of them are classified, and some of them aren't even written out, and you have no idea what they are. These presidential policy orders could be anything from saying, in the case of civil unrest, we're going to start killing every freaking body. It could say that. Most of these do not have congressional approval. Most of these are above top secret, which means that there's top secret, And then there's above top secret, which means the president can only see those. So some of these, nobody knows what they are. Congress has tried to get into them and can't do it. So we don't know what some of these are. Some of these you can look up on your own if you want to. Like the U.S. Cyber Operations Policy. Some of this you can get into. Some of these, Obama has the most PPDs that are classified, and nobody knows what they are. United States nuclear weapons. Obama also has the most for. Actually, he's the only one with the National Security Presidential Directive, which is made up for the Department of Homeland Security and does include FEMA in there, which is one of the other things I'll get to here in a minute. So some of these national security presidential directives, some of them are classified, just like it says here, classified, unclassified. Right here at the top, right here at the NSPD 17. Some of them are classified, unclassified. Some of these will tell you what they say, and some of them won't. And just like the PPDs, these are just like those. But these have to do with intelligence, security, national security. Some of these could be anything. And just like I said, some of these could be given, could pretty much make the president the sole power of anything without Congress saying anything, which is odd because one of the presidential orders is called continuity of government, which means pretty much it means take care of the executive government. It gives orders to take care of the executive part of the government, except for Senate and the House of Representatives. You're on your own. So if there's something were to happen, there's an executive order to get the president, the vice president, hit that top staff, the DOD generals, get them to a safe bunker, and the hell with everybody else. That's what the continuity of government states. It does also state that it does also add in there that continuity of government should be implemented on a basis of the like FEMA and the lower non-executive parts of the government should help local pass on to the government, the governor, and then down to your towns and cities. It does say some of that. Pretty much it says, we're by ourselves, you're on your own. It's kind of worded that way. So, like I said, some of these, nobody knows what they are. Congress doesn't know what they are. Maybe Congress does know. But when it comes to, this is George Bush, actually. This is not Obama. This is George Bush. George Bush has them. Sorry about that. It's George Bush. So for some odd reason, a lot of these presidential policies have a change in trafficking in persons, or they have the one I saw a lot on here was hostages. What to do with hostages? Right here, United States citizens taken hostage abroad. Obama has that, and so does George W. Bush. Okay, so I was going to show you something here. I think that was ASP8, a PD8 thing, but it's all right. So anyway, that shows you that Clinton, every president has some kind of executive order. They've increased over the years with every sitting president. Every sitting president has increased their executive orders. You know, there's laws that even the government tells you that there's laws that they don't have a clue as to what they are. Let me show you this one, if I can find it. There's presidential policy PBD 40. That's the United States continuity of government, which is PPD 40. That can tell you about. That can tell you more about what I was saying about pretty much your get the executive branch somewhere, and then screw everybody else. Yeah, that's what I was meaning by that. And so another thing is that Obama passed a law. It's one of those laws where that counteract all the other laws about habeas corpus. It's called preventative detention. Preventative detention is imprisonment that is punitively justified for non-punitive purposes, meaning they can hold you without cause or reason, and it also part of the I can't remember which one it was, but part of it one of the executive orders, this was made by Obama, and part of the executive order states that they can send you to Guantanamo Bay and you'll never be seen again. Now, this order was originally started out being for terrorists, and you're probably like, yeah, that's what that was for. Well, the messed up thing about that is there's wording in there. There's wording in there in section in the sections. There's wording in the sections about detaining U.S. citizens that's unclear. It kind of states that they can detain U.S. citizens. It was changed at some point in time, and then it was put back in, but section 1021 and 1022 of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2012, that pretty much says that the U.S. government can come in your house anytime they want and arrest you. And like it says right here, you can be shipped to Guantanamo Bay without trial, without being told what you're going for. Now, like I said, most of this was started in wake of 9/11 in finding terrorist attacks. But for some reason, Obama added in, like I said, to detain U.S. citizens, and the Congress tried to figure out what that was, and yeah, they couldn't. So it says convicted persons can be held indefinitely as a dangerous offender. So which means that if they see you as dangerous, they can hold you indefinitely. Now going back to what I was saying, a dangerous offender could mean anything. If you're out rioting and you're causing civil unrest, or the whole United States is out rioting because the government's doing something wrong and citizens hate it, and you're causing civil unrest, and all of a sudden martial law's implemented, whether it's implemented or not, they can just say, hey, you know what? You're a dangerous offender. Boom, you go to jail. They have no reason to do it. So that's some of it. That's some of it. There's more. Like I said, there's the continuity of government, the main section of continuity of government. Like FEMA provides guidance to the private sector for business continuity planning purposes. You know, this is in case something happens. Like I said, that's in case in case something happens, an emergency happens, and they want the executive branch to be taken care of first, and then, you know, work your way down in the system, you know. And they do have it's called framework, some kind of framework plan. Some kind of framework plan. You can look that up too. So getting back to what I was saying. Okay, so this is a readiness exercise from 1984, and it was a classified scenario developed by the United States federal government to detain large numbers. It says it right there at the top. Follow my cursor. It says to detain large numbers of United States citizens deemed to be national security threats. As you know, we all know that when they deem you a national security threat, or they say under national security, that can mean any fucking thing, don't we? We all know that. It says, in the event that President declared a state of emergency, they can arrest anybody. So this is an exercise that they did. The plan was first revealed in detail in a major daily newspaper report by Alfonso Chardi on July 5th, 1987. So what they said, the plan was called Rex 48. They also had similar exercises called Garden Plot, Lantern Spike. They have all kinds of stuff, man. They got all kinds of stuff for, you know, all kinds of exercises to implement emergency, a state of emergency exercises. They got all kinds of them. Some of them you can look up, but most of them are classified, and they could be any type of scenario you want. So a reporter or the Congress man Jack Brooks had a conversation with the attorneys, pretty much asking what this was. And this Rex 48 or Rex 84 is still classified. And it says, Congressman Jack Brooks, Colonel North, in your work in the NCS, were you assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster? And they asked him to answer the question. Mr. Chairman, I believe that question touches up on a highly sensitive and classified area, so I may request that you not touch upon that. Pretty much he's saying that what the above thing says is true. because that's what's said above is what happened with the reporter and all, and the lawyers. So it also says Brooks, when Brooks spoke, Congressman Brooks spoke, he says, I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in the Miami papers that several others and there had been plan developed by the same agency and contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was an area in which I had worked. I believe that it was, and I wanted to get his confirmation. May I most respectfully request that the matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session. There's your continuity of government. Continuity of government. So every law that you think you have, every right that you think you have by the United States Constitution and the amendments, there's a counter law for that strips them right back away from you. So the question is how does that apply to Agenda 21? I think you're starting to. Do you see the picture? Do you want to? I think you're starting to see the picture. So, how is the media? How is the government using the media to implement Agenda 21, to start Agenda 21? They probably already started it. But first of all, they need something to happen in order to take control of the people. So what's been happening all over the United States, in the United States for the last few years? The country is majorly divided, okay? People are down each other's throats. The media is the major cause of it because you have one major media outlets, Democratic or liberal, and then you got another major outlet that's right or Republican or far right, and and over the last 2 years, Democrats have turned into liberals, and Republicans have went even further right, and they're arguing back and forth. They're down each other's throats. You got liberals saying that everybody's racist. You got they got people all the refugees are coming in the country, and they want them here, and they shouldn't have to register, or they can just hop the fence and come on over, or let them fill out paperwork and just send them on their way, and just let them to not know who they are. And the Republicans are saying, no, you can't do that. We have to know who's coming in and out of the country and who's not. So you got all these, and both sides are fighting each other. You got both sides rioting. You've got both sides going to the border. They are being hateful. They're being violent towards one another. You got half of the country is being violent towards the other half. Well, liberal people aren't. They're known to be activists, are they not? Democrats, liberals are known to be activists. They're known to be nonviolent. For some reason, they're being more violent than the right side. I'm not saying I'm right or left, and I'm not saying nothing. I'm saying both sides are being hateful towards each other. Well, if you haven't noticed, more and more of that is going on. You got white supremacists killing people. You got running over people.
They're running over mobs. They're running over activists. They're running over people who are trying to participate in a demonstration. What I say about demonstrations, what I say about riots, that can be declared as a state of emergency, that can be declared, that can be part of civil unrest, that can be part of civil disobedience. Now, what do you also have? Part of the violent part of that is guns. You got the liberals and the Democrats saying they don't want guns. You got the Democrats saying that they want to take semi-automatic weapons away. You got the Republicans and all the country people who live in the country, who hunt and all that, throwing a fit. You got all these two different sides being coerced. They're being coerced to be violent by what is Republican and what is Democrat. They're being coerced to be violent by the government. You got the government telling you, one side of the government saying it needs to be this way, one side of the other side of the government saying it needs to be that way. Well, you got one news source agreeing with one side of the government and the other side agreeing with the other side. And another news source agreeing with the other side. Well, what happens when the Democrats come to take the guns of the Republicans? What happens when when the left tries to take the guns of the right? How much of a touchy subject is that? How much of a touchy subject is that? It's a really touchy subject. What do you think is going to happen? There's a bill in Congress right now signed by every Democrat that states HR 5087 that lists every semi-automatic gun, handgun. It lists every semi-automatic rifle, including the HR-15, AK-47s. It lists magazines that are over 10 rounds. It lists every accessory that you can think of. And it's due to be voted on. It was introduced to the House this year. It's due to be voted on to take all those weapons. Now, what does that have to do with Agenda 21? So you're getting ready. If there's going to be a lot of people are claiming that there's going to be a civil war against one side or the other. You know, there's going to be people are like, well, there's a civil war. What's a civil war going to do? It's going to declare a state of emergency. During a civil war, the government can take your rights, declare martial law, and there you are stuck. Here comes the army. Oh, by the way, I can't remember which president it was, but there's an executive order that now states that the army can be deployed. Look it up. The army can be deployed when martial law is declared. I can't remember which one it was. But it don't matter because you got army you got this one army dude here. He's Army and National Guard. You got the Army and the National Guard that are the same people. They're the same people. That's how they get through those loopholes. So you got the government is telling the media, or the government's saying, hey, the Democrats are reporting back, all right, just say it's like this. The Democrats are reporting back to CNN. The CNN, and if you haven't noticed, CNN has caused a lot of freaking trouble. They have. I'm not saying that Fox News hasn't. They cause their own trouble too. But you got Democrats and liberals reporting to CNN, and then you got Republicans reporting to Fox News. You know, that right there is driving a wedge between the country. It's driving a wedge between the citizens. That right there will cause civil unrest. The taking of guns will cause civil unrest. And then that gives a chance for the government to step in and declare martial law, take control, and then here comes the UN and they implement Agenda 21 right off the bat. Because you have no say-so, you have no control, they took your guns. All because one side didn't, all because one side, you couldn't compromise. All because of that. But it wouldn't matter because both of you are getting fucked. What is Agenda 21? Agenda 21 states they're going to depopulate the world. Agenda 21 says that by 2025, that the population is going to drop to 60 million people. And that's how the government is going to implement. More than likely, it's going to be implemented by your own doings. I mean, it's not necessarily your own doings. You're being coerced by the government. You're being played by the government. You're listening to what the news says. You don't need to do that. If you can compromise with the right or left side, you need to do that. You don't need to let the government have any more power than what they do, because what you don't know is you don't have any now. They have taken every law that there is and countered that law with their own law, and it's classified and you don't even know about it. You're like, no, that's not true. Look it up. Look it up. Executive orders that that give the president too much power. Executive orders that Congress don't even know what they are. What are you trying to? Are you going to tell me that the president wouldn't do that? Are you trying to tell me that the government would not do that to its citizens? Are you more afraid of the government, or is the government afraid, or is the government afraid of you? Right now, the government has the power, and the people are scared to death of it. And by right, you should be. Because there's laws that you don't know exist that take every right you have away from you. There's laws that exist that take your life away from you. There's a whole agenda that's going to take your life away from you. So that's all I wanted to tell you. Show you how the government works, how I think Agenda 21 is going to be implemented, how it seems that it's going, because there's a lot of civil unrest. And what I say about civil unrest, when there's civil unrest, when there's civil disobedience, no matter what caused the civil disobedience, well, no matter what caused the civil unrest, the government, they're secret. You have no idea what they're capable of. They report to the media what they want. All they have to do is report whatever they want to report and cause a mass panic somewhere else. They can cause one side to go against the other, which is what they're doing. They release information to the media to get one side pissed off at the other, and then what do you have? You have civil unrest. And whose fault is it? It's not the government's. Because the citizens are fighting each other. The government's going to say, you know what, we didn't have nothing to do with that. It's a civil war. It's not a government versus citizen war. We didn't cause that. You two, the citizens are fighting each other. So when you have a civil war, the government steps in and says, declares martial law, you have zero rights. It would be that easy. It would be that easy. It would be that easy to take everything away from you, all because you wasn't paying attention about what you're doing. So I want to show you this video before I get off of here. Remember I told you that FEMA was part of this? So turn your volume up. Turn your volumes up. I want you to have a good listen to this. This is Brock Long, director of FEMA. He was on Capitol Hill the other day. I watched C-SPAN. He was on Capitol Hill the other day, giving a statement about disaster preparedness. The government, when Agenda 21 happens, I think it's going to happen with civil unrest and civil disobedience. Like I said, is there civil unrest? Yes. Is it getting worse? Yes. Is it going to get bad enough to where the government has to step in and declare martial law at some point? If they want it to go that far. If they feel that they should take control, if there's a plan to make a one world government in the first place, why would they not start over at that point and start a new world order when they have the chance? They're not going to lose control. That is the government's basic function, is not to lose control. They're not going to wait until everybody on the planet kills themselves and then try to regain control back. They're not going to lose control and try to regain control back. That's not going to happen. They'll have a controlled descent down. They'll let the people initiate it, and then they'll have to step in like the big hero and stop it. But the problem is that they're making it happen in the first place. They're making it happen in the first place by using the media to control the information that they release. And then that in turn is making the citizens be violent. They're making them be unruly. So what does FEMA have to do with that? Well, part of continuity of government, like I showed you, part of continuity of government is the government. I showed you there's about 4 different ways in the Constitution, and including some directives, which was continuity of government. Some of those presidential directives or executive orders that allow the government to take over and what to do about it. How the government should react. Continuity of government basically stores the government up until everybody does whatever they're going to do, and then it sends FEMA out, pretty much like a disaster. They go hide in bunkers, and then they let The lower government entities, agencies take care of everything while they hide. And then when it's time to come back out, they have control again. So everybody's saying that FEMA has all these death camps, and no, I don't know about that. People are saying that there's FEMA trailers going around everywhere. That FEMA is setting up camps all over the United States right now. Well, this is from the director of FEMA himself, Brock Long, stating that they are in fact setting up FEMA trailers all over the United States.
We're having to stage trailers all over the country right now because of.
Have fun, everybody. I wonder when people are going to wake up and listen to what people like me or other people try to tell them or warn them about, because they don't have enough common sense to see it for themselves. You know, you got people handing you information. They're handing you a video of something on fire, showing you that it's on fire, and you still don't believe it. What are you supposed to do with people with that? What are you supposed to do with that? People need to, the citizens need to wake up and stop thinking that their government is the best thing in the world. You know, when they take control of, you know, the government, the UN is part of Agenda 21 is taken as a land grab. It's a huge land grab. It's taking all the country, all the forest, all the national forests, all the national parks. You know, this year, the UN is still pushing Agenda 21. They're still pushing Agenda 21. It's called Agenda 2030, which is an addition to Agenda 21. It's a proclamation to where the governments need to start implementing Agenda 21. And they want it done. The Agenda 30 says Agenda 2030 was the conference for that was 2014 maybe 2015, and they want by 2030 they want everything that the UN says they want Agenda 21 to be initiated. Sustainability. And they want everybody, they want the land to be gone. They want everybody to move in. It says human settlements. Human settlements. That's what it says. Agenda 2030 still says they want people to move into cities, into human settlements. That's what it says. I read it today. Every year they've extended Agenda 21 to another, to not extended it to a further year. They've extended their proclamation. And their last meeting for Agenda 2030 states that they It's that they've implemented that they now have 180 something countries dedicated to this, to Agenda 21, and they have told the countries to start implementing it. How are you supposed to start implementing depopulation and tell the population that they have to be depopulated? How do you implement that? Like I said last time, do you walk up to their house and say, hey, we have to kill you. We have to take your child and kill them. They can't do that. They're not going to do that. But like I said, you got an H.R. 5087 bill that takes your assault weapons away from you. You got the government telling the media what to say, or releasing to the media what they want to release to them. You know, the government's not going to release anything that they don't want to release. If they did, then they would declassify Area 51. They would declassify the Roswell landings. Oh, it's not real. Why would they not declassify things that they say are not real? They did an investigation, but they can't declassify that investigation. From 80 years ago, 60 years ago, they can't declassify 60-year-old methods of the FBI and the CIA. They can't declassify that. Knowing that they don't use those methods anymore. And you think that you can trust them to lead you. Like I said, I understand what they mean, what they're trying to do, and they're trying to save the earth. They're trying to save the human population. I get that. There's a different way to do it. But this video right here is to tell you that the UN and their Agenda 2030, they have told the countries to start implementing Agenda 21. They have told them that by 2030, the UN should have control of everything. The World Health Organization should have control of everything. Like I said, let's listen to Brock Long one more time before I get off here.
We're having to stage trailers all over the country right now